Hello everybody and welcome to Nathan on Shuffle and to my latest episode here. This is the second episode in my series of Best Prog Albums of All Time. I did one last week. I'll put in the description a link if you want to go watch that one first before diving into this one. On the previous episode I did some honorable mentions and then went through numbers 25 to 21. And in today's episode I'm going through numbers 20 to 16 on my list. So, and just to kind of reset how I'm doing this, it's a little bit of a unique approach, at least I think it is. I'm taking the Prog Archives list. Prog Archives is a website that, takes all of people's ratings on the different prog albums and makes lists and compiles what people consider the best prog albums. So I took their list. I restricted myself to only one album per artist on my list and basically just took the top 25 from Prog Archives and then rearranged it according to my taste and plus what I think are some of the most important prog albums and giving a little bit of weight depending on the importance in the genre. So, and just to address some concerns and some questions from the previous video, I think the most pressing issue some people had was questioning certain selections on my list if they really should qualify as prog. Specifically, I heard some people say Frank Zappa's Hot Rats, more of a jazz fusion album, not really prog. I heard the same thing about Mahavishnu Orchestra. And, we could probably do a whole deep dive video on what is progressive rock, what isn't, and the importance of genres or lack of importance. Is it really worth it to kind of put things into boxes and say this is this but not that? But suffice it to say, really, if it's on Prog Archives, I consider it in the family of progressive rock. And part of what I liked about this list and the way I constructed it is it brought in some really interesting choices that I don't think you'd normally see on a prog albums list. So I thought that was cool. Some foreign language albums, some albums from some fringe genres that you don't typically see in the mainstream, and also some modern albums from post 90s era that I thought was cool to include when most of these lists just really stick to the 70s material. So that was what intrigued me to do the one band per artist, and I just wanted to be able to celebrate more artists. I know there's several albums by certain artists that would be in consideration for best albums, and I'm going to try to spotlight them as I go through this list, so don't worry, I'll mention all of the other favorites, but I just thought it was cool to kind of cast a wider net, include some artists that you might not normally expect on these lists, and to include some different genres and different, subgenres of progressive rock. I think this list kind of encapsulates a lot of different facets. I talked about Zool last time, some more fusion areas of progressive rock. Today there's going to be some choices that I'm sure are going to bring about this debate of if it's prog or not. But I'm not really going to concern myself with that. I'm just going to give my list and present it the way it is. And if you're hung up on the rankings and why is this higher than that or whatever, it's all pretty arbitrary. On a different day I could have ranked this totally different. It was just kind of my feelings at the time, and really it's just 25 great albums to check out, and hopefully there's something on this list that either sparks a memory or makes you curious to check out something you may not have heard before. That's really the point of these episodes. So I just want to put that out there, and then I'll do the other 5 albums quickly in this episode. Hopefully you guys are enjoying this series. Mostly positive comments, but there were a couple of nitpicky things that I wanted to address here to make sure you realize I'm reading your comments. I take the feedback seriously, and I'm trying to construct what I think is a great show for you guys. So hopefully you appreciate that. And without further ado, let's dive into numbers 20 through 16 on today's list. All right, at number 20, we've got Mike Oldfield and his album Ommadawn. This is from 1975, considered crossover prog in Prog Archives. He's a UK artist. This lands at number 59 on the Prog Archives list. This is his third album coming off the heels of Tubular Bells from 1973 and Hergest Ridge from 1974. And for a lot of people, it kind of combines the best elements of both those albums into one really superstar record from Mike Oldfield. I feel like his music really set the stage for kind of more of a new age kind of style. It's very atmospheric and ethereal at times. He utilizes a lot of different instruments. He's kind of one of the first of like this kind of one-man band feel that some modern artists kind of take to heart, where they do all the instruments themselves and are somewhat virtuosos. And he's doing most of the instruments here with a couple of guests aboard as well. But it's a beautiful landscape. It's just some folky elements, some bright, beautiful playing, some great classical guitar and female choirs, and, mandolin and soaring keys, and, some African rhythms and chanting, beautiful pipes, and just a wide range of instruments that he's playing with as it continues to develop all these themes and all these beautiful soundscapes that are very enjoyable to listen to. It's a very relaxed, kind of subtle atmosphere as he's diving into the human psyche. And I really love just the vibe of it, just how you can kind of sit back and relax and let this wash over you and take you on a journey. And I love that about progressive rock in general, that it's not just your standard 3-minute, rock songs or pop songs. You can live with this music, and it can envelop you, and it can bring you onto a journey, and is really experimental and takes a lot of different directions and cues. It's very adventurous, even though it's very mellow and very light at times. But I think it's a really great example of something really beautifully done and captured here. 2 sides to the record that's basically just one long extended piece of music that is just really beautifully realized. So that's definitely on the list here at number 20. Next, we're dipping our toes back into the Italian progressive rock scene with Banco del Mutuo Soccorso. This is the album Darwin from 1972. There's also a couple other entries from Banco on the list on Prog Archives. This one clocked in at number 21 on Prog Archives list. Banco del Mutuo Soccorso, the self-titled from 1972, was number 49 on their list. Lo sono nato libero from 1973 is at number 23. And once again, I'm sorry for the pronunciations. That was another comment on the previous video that I pronounced some things wrong, which is bound to happen. I'm not an expert, especially in these foreign language records. But this is a really exciting album. It's one of the ones that I wasn't super familiar with before starting this project. But it's a concept album about evolution, as you might expect from the title. So you get a lot of that imagery, prehistoric, volcanoes, lava, reptiles, apes, the development of human species. But the music itself is just varied throughout the record. There's moments of very jazz-driven music, very organ-heavy hard rock, symphonic progressive rock, mellow passages, piano balladry, Italian folk, just a whole mess of synthesizer sounds throughout the record. It's very all over the place in a way, but it's grounded by this concept that drives it forward. It's really highlighted by this interplay between the 2 brothers that are an important integral part of this group, the Nocenzi brothers on keyboards, really grounding this in a lot of different styles and sounds. I really, really love this. It's just, there's so much to it. There's a lot packed into this package. I almost expect this album to be a lot longer than it is, because there's so many tracks, so many different moments and movements throughout the makes of tracks here. But it's bombastic, it's operatic and theatrical, has some dramatic, haunting melodies, some almost medieval kind of flashbacks and classic arrangements, and very inspired vocals from Francesco di Giacomo. So it's really fantastic piece of work, and there's so many concept records on my list that it shows that prog fans really love their conceptual records, and I think this is a fantastic one, a great showcase for Italian progressive rock, certainly. So that's what we have at number 19. All right, at number 18, we have Opeth's Still Life from 1999, and I know this might draw some controversy from the more prog purists in the audience, but I thought it was cool to include some prog metal into this list, and so I wanted Opeth to be a part of that, because they kind of capture the more extreme, death metal influences in modern progressive metal that I think is really interesting and important to the genre as it develops throughout time. So this is a group from Sweden. They hit number 50 on Prog Archives list. They also have 2 other albums on Prog Archives top 100 list. Blackwater Park from 2001 is number 57, and Ghost Reveries from 2005 is number 64. All great albums. That's kind of like their premium period for me. And I've gone on record on my channel to say I'm not really a big fan of the growling vocals. It's not really my type of thing. But if anyone does it well, it's Opeth. Michael Ackerfeld is just a fantastic vocalist, and he's able to make the growling kind of make sense to me. Like, you can still understand what he's trying to say, but he's bringing this passion and this darkness into the lyrics that's really essential to Opeth's music. And once again, we have a concept record here, a very tragic story, a prequel to one of their prior albums called Orchid, about a person cast out of society, wandering in a forest, talking about a tragic love story with a woman named Melinda throughout the record. And you see these kind of dark situations play out, which is perfect in line with the music and the heaviness and the darkness and melancholy that you hear throughout the record. But I just really think it's a standout record with a lot of progressive elements. They really do a great job balancing kind of the light and shade of their sounds. They have these lighter, more acoustic, more folk-driven moments that are beautiful, but still dark and still very complex and interesting. But then they balance that with some really heavy riff-driven sections that are pure metal and have some really complex, cool, different riffs that they bring to the table and repeat in really interesting fashion. So they're one of the premier prog metal bands, even if they're in the more extreme prog metal camp, and they're doing concept records. This to me is kind of the moment where they catapulted into like one of the premier prog metal bands, where before they were more in the death metal camp. This is where they really flourished in a more progressive sense of the word. And it's just an excellent record that should be enjoyed by many. I know it's going to turn off people who are not into the growling side of the equation, but if you're willing to accept some of that, I think what's cool about them is the balance. It's not all just growls and heaviness and blast beats and, intensity. They really balance it well with some really great acoustic sections that bring a lightness and a breeziness to the music that's well needed as kind of breathers in between these heavier sections. It's just such a great balance and a great way to showcase both sides of the band. They did this really well in their dual albums, Damnation and Deliverance, where one album's really the lighter acoustic side of the band and one album's the darker, more heavy, intense side of the band, and it showcased how they're great at both sides, and it's really the magic when they combine those in excellent fashion and are able to balance out all these things into a very balanced and beautiful experience of a record. So definitely a highlight and well worth checking out. And I know some people are probably not going to like this inclusion because they're not really into the prog metal genre and more prefer the early 70s, but I think this is a great example post 1990 of something really excellent that has come out more recently. I mean, this album's still over 25 years old, but it's more in the recent genres compared to like back in the early 70s, and I'm really grateful that it made the list here. One of my favorite records. I really enjoyed this pick. Next at number 17, we've got Supertramp and their album Crime of the Century from 1974, crossover prog, according to Prog Archives from the UK. This is number 41 on their Prog Archives list, and I just adore this record, and probably one of the most, like, is it prog, is it not prog debates on this whole list, because clearly for a lot of people this is maybe considered closer to like an art rock, more definitely has its poppier elements, definitely in that camp. But I think it's really cool to include on the list a crossover prog album, and I think this is kind of the poster child for albums that dip their toes into prog rock. It's a conceptual record. There's some extended pieces and some really interesting musical diversions and different genres being played with. So it has its foot into the progressive world, but it's not fully a prog rock album, perhaps. It definitely can still be accepted and loved in just the normal classic rock and, art rock and art pop kind of worlds as well. But it's just a great record and one worthy of highlighting and obviously well loved by the progressive rock community. And that's kind of, if you get hung up by genres and is this really prog or not prog, maybe instead of thinking of this as like the best prog albums, maybe it's the best albums loved by prog rock fans is maybe a better way to put it. Because I think many prog rock fans really appreciate this record and what the band is doing here. And it's great to see them kind of bring out a progressive nature into what's maybe a more mainstream album than a lot of things that you might see on this list. But it starts off with School, which is just a beautiful, excellently realized track, that great harmonica entrance, and changes a lot in different patterns and breaks and sections, showcasing a progressive spirit. Sure, there's the more popular tracks. Bloody Well Right is very bluesy and fun. Dreamer is definitely taking its cues more from the pop of the era. But there's so many cool diversions, different things going on with the other tracks. Rudy is a 7-minute progressive powerhouse. Crime of the Century is such a beautiful send-off with some really enchanting melodies. And so it's just a really great record that showcases to me what I love about the progressive rock genre, that it's can be very accessible, can be very melodic and very enjoyable to listen to, but it has an adventurous nature and spirit that makes you want to delve further, listen more times, and really uncover some of the hidden gems in the musical landscape that's unfolding before you. And this is a great example of it. I really like Richard Davies and Roger Hodgson kind of providing a great duo, not unlike kind of Lennon-McCartney kind of situation where they take turns doing the songwriting between tracks on this album, but they each have their signature style and really bring something exciting to the table here. And I think it results in Supertramp's finest album and a great inclusion. And I know it's probably a bit high on my version of the list, but I just really have much adoration for this record, and I think it's just beautifully realized and a great entry record into the world of progressive rock if you're coming from a different background, if you're coming from like the 70s pop and rock kind of feel. This is a great way to enter into something that definitely has its progressive rock undertones, and I really respect it for being that kind of a gateway record into our beloved genre. And then finally for today, I have Harmoniums. Once again, I'm sorry for the pronunciation, but this is Si on avait besoin d'une cinématique saison. So this is basically an album that's centered around the 4 seasons, I guess with a 5th season as well. This is from 1975, prog folk from Canada. This is all in French. It's French-Canadian band from Quebec, I believe. This is number 27 on Prog Archives list, and I have to agree that it's just a beautiful record with so many heart-wrenching melodies and so much beauty on display throughout the record. I really like how it's framed, because basically it goes through the 4 seasons. The first song is about spring, and then we move into summer, and then autumn, and then finally into winter, before we get the 5th season, which is kind of a epic track at the end of the record that's really beautiful. It has a bit of almost a classical flavor. It's mostly instrumental, and it just has so much beautiful playing, flute work, some saxophones, some beautiful acoustic guitars. And I just really appreciate the folky landscape and the beauty on display. There's some mellotron moments that are really beautifully done as well. But the shorter tracks are all fun and great expressions of this wonderful band as well. Just bright and beautiful. Definitely taking some cues from some of the more acoustic kind of moments from Genesis is what I can recognize in their music. Dixie is a fun track that's more in like a ragtime kind of style. But it's a really wonderful band that I didn't know much about, but this album really took me on a journey and impressed me almost more than anything else, with some exceptions that is on this list. I just really think it's breathtakingly beautiful. And once again, I've seen in comments about this album that some people quibble with, is it really progressive? Because in a lot of ways, the structures of these songs, there's nothing really virtuoso about this. There's nothing really super complex, honestly. But that doesn't matter to me. I think it's progressive because of the framing, the concept, the way they're able to experiment in different genres like that Dixie track, and the expanded epic at the end, which showcases an adventurous nature, them just living in this landscape and in this environment and showcasing all these beautiful melodies as they go about. Unfortunately, the singer, frontman of Harmonium, Serge Fiori, passed away recently, so I wanted to mention that. Passed away at the age of 73 within the past couple months, I believe. But a wonderful band that's legacy lives on, obviously very well regarded in their homeland of Canada. And it's great to have some representation from Canada on this list. And once again, foreign language vocals, this is all in French. So I just absolutely adore it. I think it's beautiful. And this is the kind of music that really speaks to me. And I had to include it and put it pretty high on my list here of the best prog albums of all time. All right, so that's what I have for you guys today. Hopefully you appreciate this episode and are interested in some of these albums. I know some of them could be quibbled with if you're looking for some of the classics and are not seeing them yet. Of course, as we get farther down the countdown, you're going to recognize a lot more of the selections as we get into the top 10 or so. But I wanted to just give some extra love to some of these albums that you may not see quite as often on these lists. And all of these are worthy of listening to and enjoying, so I recommend you check them out if you haven't yet. And hopefully you're enjoying the series and are excited to tune in next week to see what makes the list from 15 to 11. So thank you guys, and I'll catch you in a future episode. Enjoy the music, everybody.